The wait is over. We have Scott Ritter on the line here with us. Scott Ritter doesn't need much of an introduction, but he's a friend of Mint Press and he's a friend of the show here at the Mother of All Talk Shows. Most of you probably already know him. Scott is a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector charged with observing Iraqi WMDs. Welcome to the show, Scott. Well, it's so good to have you here, Scott. Now, we're going to be moving on to the subject of things that are happening in West Asia. Since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in December, we have seen Israel extend its influence over Syria. Now, a US-backed security agreement is on the table, which would see a demilitarized zone and a no-fly zone extending from the Israeli border all the way to Damascus. What have you made of this deal? And just before you answer that, we got to consider that Israel just bombed Damascus a couple of days ago.
Israel's bombed more than just Damascus. Israel continues to strike wherever it wants to in Syria. The notion that Syria is a sovereign state is ridiculous at this juncture. And the other, I think, vote that needs to be considered is, what does Turkey think of this? Turkey has a vested interest in the future of Syria, and the Israelis are obviously concerned about this. This is why I think we're looking at a demilitarized zone to create a gap between the Israeli occupied spaces of southern Syria and the limits of Turkey's military progress into Syria. The Israelis fear having Turkey directly on their border because that creates an opportunity for force-on-force confrontation that could lead to direct war between Israel and Turkey, which is something Israel doesn't want. You had senior Israelis say that the number one threat to Israel isn't Iran, it's Turkey. And so I think that's why the United States is pushing so hard to get this demilitarized space.
Well, it's really interesting to see what has developed inside of Syria. We have a former ISIS commander, Ahmed al-Shara', or formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani, have his image and his reputation and his history as an ISIS commander completely whitewashed and now being welcomed with open arms by the West. Where do you think Syria is going with this new leadership?
Like you, I'm somewhat perplexed as to what exactly is going on here. Either the United States and other nations have basically erased their collective memories about what ISIS was, what ISIS is, or Jolani was in the game the entire time. And there, of course, is some hints with U.S. intelligence about giving ISIS space in order to destabilize the Assad regime, that basically the United States sought to use the forces of Islamic extremism inside Syria to weaken Bashar al-Assad. And now, Assad has fallen and they have to live with the consequences. But I don't know where this is going, because Jolani is inherently incompatible with any vision the United States has of normalized society. This is a man where you can put a suit on this guy, you can put a tie on this guy, but he still commands people who are committing horrific atrocities against Shia, against Alawites, against Christians, and against any Sunni who doesn't agree with their limited vision of Islam. I can't see this relationship lasting. I think what we're seeing is evidence that Jolani's victory took everybody by surprise, and people are still trying to come to grips with how they're ultimately going to react to this.
Absolutely. And I think, for those who have watched, al-Julani take over this leadership position inside of Syria, we watched him close up all of the resistance camps inside of Syria, saying that, we can't get involved with the resistance against Israel. There have been a lot of rumors about normalization with the state of Israel. And of course, as Israel bombs Syria and takes some of its land, and destroys the equipment of the Syrian military, Al-Jalani doesn't seem to have any big responses. What do you say about that?
Again, I think this is proof positive that Jolani's victory even took Jolani by surprise. There doesn't seem to have been any long-term planning, any contingencies in place. We're seeing a man seeking to consolidate his hold on Damascus and in his hold on the Syrian countryside. All the while, Turkey is seeking to figure out what to do with this Jolani victory. I mean, everybody needs to remember that Jolani wasn't Turkey's go-to man in Damascus. Turkey actually had a Syrian government in exile that it was looking to install, and Jolani got in ahead of that game. Nobody expected this outcome, and as a result, you're seeing just people making things up as they go along, no plan whatsoever on how to proceed. And even the United States, I mean, the imagery of, the American admiral who commands Central Command, whose forces today are in Syria and Iraq, allegedly hunting down ISIS, standing side by side with Jolani, shaking his hand, just is mind-boggling to me.
Absolutely. And I want to turn to Iran here. Steve Bannon recently said his impeccable sources confirmed that the US and Israel are still pushing for regime change in Iran. While the Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal has claimed that billionaire Bill Ackman was pressuring Charlie Kirk to back such a project, reportedly offering him $150 million. None of this is in the mainstream, but it echoes the writing on the wall that we've seen before over regime change operations. Given your experience exposing false WMD claims in Iraq and warning about how propaganda and financial pressure are used to manufacture consent for war, do you see credible signs that Washington and Tel Aviv, again, are laying the groundwork for regime change in Iran now under the Trump administration?
Well, I think we need to understand that the United States and Israel have had for some time now policies of regime change. Even when the Obama administration was negotiating the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, their CIA was creating an Iran mission center whose job was to find the mechanisms necessary to remove the Iranian regime from power. It's been the goal and objective of every American presidency since the Reagan administration. No American president ever has thought, "Oh, I can live in peace and harmony with the theocracy in Tehran." And I think the Iranians are fully aware of this. I mean, they make tactical decisions about the necessity to negotiate here, negotiate there, because they're fending off a variety of threats, sanctions, economic threats, covert threats, etc. And yes, I think Israel and the United States are looking to create a WMD type excuse for regime change in the form of a nuclear weapons program. This is where I think the wisdom of the Iranians comes into play. There's many people out there saying that the 12-day war, Israel's surprise attack against Iran, is proof positive that Iran must seek a nuclear weapon. I've said from day one that if Iran does seek a nuclear weapon, that will be the end of the Iranian regime, because all gloves will come off. And I think the Iranian government understands this, because we're seeing them enter a new relationship with the International Atomic Energy Agency, even as everybody acknowledges the IAEA played a role in facilitating the Israeli attack. But the Iranians understand that in order to keep Russia and China on their side, they must stay in the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. And to stay in the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty, they must have a relationship with the IAEA. And so long as Iran takes this tack, it's going to be very difficult for Israel and the United States to manufacture an excuse for a regime change operation, especially with Iran in possession of missiles that can inflict extraordinarily harm on Israel in any future endeavor of that nature.
And we saw when when Tel Aviv was enduring the attacks by Iran, they did a lot of damage inside of Tel Aviv. But unfortunately, because of the Israeli censor, we don't really know for sure how much that damage was. But we do know it was quite bad and cost them millions, if not billions, of dollars. We have seen reports of Israeli agents being accused of planting surveillance devices on US emergency vehicles. We have a theme for today's show, which has been Israeli surveillance tech. Before that, the Trump administration concluded that Israel planted cell phone surveillance devices all around the White House. What do you make of the Israeli operation to surveil and spy on the US, and how extensive is it?
Well, the United States has been a top Israeli espionage target from the very beginning. We only need to bring up the name of Jonathan Pollard to understand that Israel has been spying on the United States since the 1980s, and I would say even prior to that. Israel is very concerned about the United States and especially about American leadership. They need to understand what is being said behind closed doors. They need to ensure that America continues to support Israel without any hesitation. So, what they're looking for by monitoring the communications of the president and his inner circle is an indication of a weakening of resolve. And then Israel will turn on its influence system here in the United States to firm up that resolve using whatever tactics and techniques the Israelis use, money, blackmail, you name it. This is what they do. I'll just say this up front. Israel is not a friend of the United States. I wish people would understand this wholeheartedly. They're not our friends. They're not our allies. They use us for their survival. The Zionist entity in Israel cannot survive without the full support of the United States. And so it's the top national security priority of Israel to ensure that America continues to support Israel. And this is why you see them spying on our president. I'll say that one more time for the American audience. Spying on our president, your president. And that simply can't be allowed. Israel is a hostile entity to the United States, and we need to recognize that. We also need to recognize that whatever we're doing with Israel, the crimes that Israel are committing because of us, it impacts our reputation as well. The world is recognizing Israel as a genocidal entity, and the United States is being hit with that label too, because without us, there would be no Israeli genocide in Gaza today.